Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carrie Farmer, and I'm the co-director of the Rand Epstein Family Veterans Policy Research Institute. I want to welcome everyone to this webinar today. This is part of our bi-monthly webinar series, which is focused on high-priority veterans policy issues. Next slide. The Veterans Policy Institute has as its mission to conduct innovative interdisciplinary research to improve the lives of those who have served in the U.S. military. We aim to publish and disseminate our research findings, so this webinar is an example of disseminating those findings so that we can connect objective and rigorous analysis to decision makers so that we can improve evidence-based decision making. Want to focus on a couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started. We have the chat feature open, as I think you can see, so please feel free to ask questions or share resources that the audience might be interested in. To ask questions to the panelists, you can use the Q&A feature. We will monitor that and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. Okay, next slide. In today's webinar, my colleagues Jeff Wenger and Aaron Strong will provide a brief presentations of the findings and recommendations from their recent report on how military occupation duties and skill requirements align with workforce demands in the civilian sector. Their presentation will be followed by a panel discussion with our guest experts, Lakeisha Lloyd from Common Defense, Mo Maddox from Veterans to Naval Careers in the California State University San Marcos Veterans Center, and Matthew Passmore from the U.S. Department of Labor. My colleague, Melanie Zaber, will moderate the panel. Melanie is a senior economist and co-director of the Rand Lowy Family Middle Class Pathways Center. So to get us started, I'd like to introduce Jeff and Aaron, both of whom are senior economists here at Rand. Jeff co-directs the Rand Lowy Family Middle Class Pathways Center with Melanie. His research focuses on labor force participation and the transition of military personnel to civilian employment. Aaron is a professor of policy analysis at the Rand School of Public Policy, and his research focuses on energy, environmental, and macroeconomic policy. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Carrie, thanks so much. Yeah, you can see why we were put together. We make a good team for this project. Next slide, please. All the work that you're going to see today is co-authored by Aaron and I. And the first question you might be asking is why we wrote this paper. And solar, wind, geothermal, battery manufacturing, all of these occupations, all of these there's a huge demand for this type of work in the U.S. economy right now. And the energy sector needs people, and then we believe that the military veterans have these skills. In 2023, we hired 250,000 occupations that were related to this sector, and we think that's going to grow. And just as a way of background to think about, 30% of union electricians are reaching retirement age. So we're going to see an increased demand, both from the energy sector growing, but from the population declines that we're likely to see in the sector. Next slide. So what did we do in this research project? The first thing we did was we identified which industries are involved in energy production, transmission, infrastructure. And then we found the occupations that were central to doing those tasks within those industries. And we mapped those occupations onto military occupations across the 4 service branches you see here. And we figured out which occupations match well with the civilian occupations so that those folks could be able to do that job efficiently and effectively. And then finally, we assessed some regional economic impacts and discussed the policy implications of what we're on to. Next slide, please. So what did we find? Overall, we found that there are a lot of military occupations that match to civilian energy and infrastructure occupations. There were 55 military occupations across the 4 service branches that map to 57 energy and infrastructure occupations, but they're not all one-to-one matches. There are many military, and the next slide will show, there are many military occupations that map to multiple civilian occupations, and that's why we have 255 close occupational matches. Next slide, please. So you can see here, as an example, there are 4 military occupations. I'll talk about the Air Force Munition System Specialist occupation just briefly. That single occupation matches to 18 civilian occupations. And the question you may be asking is why? Well, first and foremost, safety, right? If you're working in the energy sector, you're working in wind turbines, you're working in solar panels, you're working in energy transmission or generation, safety is super important. But working with machinery, working with specialized equipment, working in tight spaces, working in places that are at high heights, having a mechanical aptitude, things that are physically demanding, all of these things correlate well between this specific Air Force occupation or AFSC and the civilian occupations that are working in the energy and infrastructure sector. Next slide, please. It's also important to note that many of the service branches themselves have specializations. Each service branch specializes in different sets of skills. So focusing on the Navy for just a second, power systems are super important. Every ship has a power system. Those systems need to be maintained and made operational. And there's enlisted personnel that are trained to do that, to those types of tasks. Those things generate enormous and significant alignment with the civilian sector. Um, you can see that there are different capabilities developed in each of the service branches across the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force. Next slide, please. So what do we turn our attention to the economics of the situation? Are these good jobs? Do they pay well? And the answer is unequivocally yes. Among the occupations that we talk about, the electricians, the power plant operators, the supervisors, those occupations are paying above the 75th percentile of earnings in the US economy. What does that mean? That means 75%. That means that the workers in these occupations are earning more than 75% of other workers in the US economy. There are very few energy and infrastructure jobs that are below the wages for white and pink collar workers, for entry-level jobs for pink collar workers. So even jobs in offices that work behind a desk, many of these jobs are paying better than entry-level wages for those jobs. And there are very few energy and infrastructure jobs that pay below entry-level work in the broader economy, almost none. So in general, we can match skills, and those skills match to high-paying jobs in the energy and infrastructure sector. Next slide. Additional economic impacts relate to what are the spillovers? If we employ workers in these occupations, what is the effect on the overall economy? Of the jobs that we identify in the civilian sector, there are 57 jobs that we think are good matches to the military positions. 41 of them have positive spillover effects. This means that one one hire of that occupation generates more employment overall in the local economy. So one job is that job itself plus 0.3 to 0.5 jobs in the training sector or in the transportation sector or in the utility sector overall. So not only do you get the employment effect, you get a spillover, a positive spillover of additional employment induced by hiring that worker in that sector. So high wages, positive spillovers, seems like a good and high levels of skill match. This seems to be a win-win for the economy. Last slide, please. So what should we be thinking about doing? We should be thinking about aligning our credentialing and licensing so that we can take advantage of people who already have some of these skills to accelerate them into these positions. So almost all of the recommendations you're going to see here are about giving people credit for prior learning, accelerating their credentials, whether through community colleges and apprenticeships, so we can fast track people. We can coordinate agencies so that we can identify these occupations as good matches to the civilian sector. We should target workforce funding, and we should let employers know that these are the occupations that they should be, the military occupations they should be looking at if they're trying to hire in this civilian sector. So we want to focus on those MOSs with the strongest civilian alignment that are identified in this paper. And with that, The next slide, I will turn it over to Melanie Zaber to conduct or at least orchestrate and moderate the roundtable. Melanie, over to you.
Thanks so much for that great overview, Jeff. I'm Melanie Zaber, a senior economist at RAND and co-director of RAND's Middle Class Pathways Center. My research focuses on workforce development, including for the Army, for veterans, and the civilian population, so very excited about this research and very excited about our terrific panel today. Along with our researchers, we have two guests who are also veterans themselves. Lakeisha Lloyd is the National Deputy Climate Justice Director for Common Defense, the nation's largest veteran-led grassroots organization committed to engaging, organizing, training, and mobilizing veterans to elect accountable leaders and advance social justice. And Matthew Passmore is a regional veterans employment coordinator with the U.S. Department of Labor's Veterans Employment and Training Service. He collaborates with employers and federal partners to expand career opportunities for veterans and strengthen community support networks. Let's start off with Lakeisha, since your organization funded this important work. What motivated this work? Why the focus on energy careers, and what do you plan to do with the work?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with everyone. This is a labor of love, I can say, to be able to have this RAND report commissioned and being able to share it with the world today. So a little bit about my background. I'm a United States Army veteran, disabled veteran. I served from 2001 to 2010. And, I was living in West Virginia. I lived in West Virginia after I got out of my service. And if anyone knows anything about West Virginia, that is coal capital, right? When you're looking at the legacy and the pride of the state of West Virginia, it is the fact that through coal, they were able to power a nation in this small little state. And so when we were looking at, we started this work in West Virginia, it was a very simple thing. You know, people were hurting financially and economically. And we're seeing this surge around the Inflation Reduction Act when it was first, presented to be voted on, to seeing it as an opportunity for jobs for West Virginians. There is working with Senator Manchin at the time, who was, really trying to get us to be able to get that bill passed. We were able to show that this is actually this is jobs for West Virginia veterans. Um, and it really just came down to, this is a booming industry, working and bridging and having conversations with the unions in the state, the West Virginia construction and labor councils, the Department of Environmental Protection in the state of West Virginia, and other organizations, understanding that this is a big opportunity to deal with the socioeconomic and racial justice issues that were happening when it comes to the economics in the state of West Virginia. And we knew this, right? Having served, we knew that we come with a host of skills. That a lot of the times but we're in the military, those skills and things that we were able to learn did not necessarily transfer into civilian certification for us to be able to get into these jobs after we got out of service. There wasn't necessarily the just transition that we would like to see, and still isn't. A lot of folks are like, well, you can get your degree when you go to college. Well, that doesn't necessarily always translate either when you're in the service, because depending on your job, depending on your leadership, just depending on a lot of factors that are outside of your control, you may not be able to get that degree while you're in service. So you have a lot of veterans that are coming out of service or having to work 2 to 3 jobs just to be able to make ends meet. And so when we're looking at this new booming industry, really through the Inflation Reduction Act, knowing that this is going to stimulate this economy and in this industry, we started educating communities around working and bridging with different partners and different stakeholders like the unions, to educate community members and the veterans within those communities that these jobs are available. This work started on the west side of Charleston. It is one of the largest Black population tracts in the state of West Virginia. And in most communities that we see like this, the money literally stopped at the tracks. You have a working class community that had dealt with a lot of economic issues and crises that just brought, to put it into perspective, the average salary in the Charleston area in the state of West Virginia is around $45,000 a year, give or take. The west side of Charleston, just that one community, is half that. So, this was an opportunity to really be able to educate community members and bring those folks who had the jobs, who had the paid training opportunities that were created because of the Inflation Reduction Act to bring people into this new industry, which was new to a lot of people. For most of us, we've known this has been an industry that's been around for a while. And so when it came to actually time to say we need the data, right? We know that this is a real thing through lived experience, through hearing the stories of others. But when we get out of service, any kind of tracking on us doesn't exist. It's very, very small. So we don't know exactly what the underemployment rate for veterans are. We know it's high, but we don't actually have that data. So that's why it was so important to be able to work with the RAND Institute and be able to bring that data to life. And we have been able to do that with the RAND report. What do we plan to do with this? We're already using it. Within our climate program, we focus on two things: renewable energy workforce development, which is our education, uh, educating communities, letting folks know that this is available to you. And we're already utilizing that in our organizing efforts within the states that we work in across the country, and educating folks and bringing them into the fold. We started, like I said, we started this work in West Virginia, and just in those few months, just beginning this, we were able to actually get people through the door and start on the route to be able to get good paying jobs within the community. The second part is the renewable energy project siting work, right? Getting these projects that are happening, solar, battery energy storage systems, wind, whatever may have you, to get through the red tape of the legislature, to be able to get through, zoning and commission plannings, to get those permits so that way communities are able to benefit from these projects being able to be built. And a lot of that happens with work, right? A lot of these projects bring jobs into these communities that are very rural. There's not a lot of opportunities out there. You don't necessarily may have an opportunity to go to college, right? Your family may not be able to afford it. So this is another way to be able to get into really good paying jobs that's going to keep the bills paid, right? And continue to put food on people's tables. So we are already utilizing this work, and we continue to use this report to educate communities, but not only that, but decision makers, the lawmakers, the stakeholders that are going to be able to put, just transition legislation into the books. So that way, when veterans are coming out of service, right, or service members are getting out of service, this is a pathway available to them to where they're able to get out and go straight into these jobs if they so desire and get the training that they need. Or if they're already veterans and they're out of service, being able to get into those programs and the development of those programs. So just super excited to be on here and being able to talk about this. Yeah, so that's currently where we're at. What are some of the barriers? I will say that there's a lot. People don't know what they don't know. And the veteran community at large, a lot of people don't know exactly what happens to our veterans and like how veterans play a part in our overall economy and stimulation of growth within communities and in potential areas. So, really just educating, doing a lot of educating, having conversations like this, joining panels like this, or if it's going to DC and talking to lawmakers, or if it is going to the State House and talking to lawmakers, city councils, whatever we have to do to be able to educate people on veterans and what actually happens when we get out of service.
Thank
Yeah.
Oh, Tice, I would love to hear Matthew's perspective on this too. You really pulled on some important threads about the difficulty with translating skills into the civilian world for veterans. And Matthew, I was hoping you could take us a little bit broader beyond the energy sector and talk a little stage setting across industries, how DOL Vets supports veterans with that translation across different industries in the civilian landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me on. Such a privilege to go ahead and speak on behalf of my agency. Quick little background about myself too. So, also, I imagine like some of the people in the audience right now wore the same boots as you. I served in the U.S. Army, born and bred by a first sergeant mother and a sergeant major father. So you can imagine that very strict household environment, so strict, in fact, I'm not sure if they still call it this, but my brother and I, we decided to go to the dark side, they call it, and we went the officer route and both attended the military academy. He's just now actually getting ready to transition out of the military himself, and I transitioned out. Almost 10 years from this date, in fact. But what we're doing inside the space to go ahead and help with the transition, I mean, we're doing quite a bit. There's actually one of our main priorities is to go ahead and streamline and help create and enhance getting pathways built in to high paying skilled trade positions. The energy industry is a booming industry that is growing. Lakeisha, I like what you said. Having worked previously as a tap manager, a few years back, that's a big thing. I hear that all the time from our transition service member community. Is I didn't know that. If I knew what I knew then, what I do now, I would have done things a little bit differently. Which is why it is incredibly important to go ahead and partner with all these different growing industries to go ahead and not necessarily push any transitioning service members in a particular direction, but to let them know that of all the different opportunities that exist out there. Some people prefer, especially in the military environment, a lot of us are familiar with the kinetic hands-on training. Some of us prefer that. Some of us like to go ahead and have really a structured manner into where we know that career trajectory, that training path, what that looks like. And we partner with a lot of different organizations to go ahead and do that. But many ways we do that. I think that'd be a great time to go ahead and plug in one of our programs called the ENPP program, and I can go ahead and drop a link here. I'll drop a link here in just a moment so you all can go ahead and explore that a little bit more. But we have Energy Partners, our Employment Navigator Partnership Pilot. Forgive me. There's going to be more than just that acronym that I will throw out here. But Employment Navigator Partnership Program, it's shown great promise. That's essentially a supplemental program within the TAP overall program. We are growing. That's actually our second priority. First one is advancing those high-paying skilled trade positions and creating pathways to transitioning service members and the broader military-affiliated community. And one way we can go ahead and support that is with our second priority and the expansion of our ENPP, or that Employer Navigator Partnership Pilot Program. And essentially what that program does is it kind of helps answer that question on, what can I do? So that transitioning service member that wants to kind of do a little bit more of a deep dive into career exploration and what have you, outside of some of the mandatory curriculums that's provided within our, DOL employment workshops, the fundamental trainings, that's, requirements at TAP. There is that optional requirement too, as well, with the career exploration track, which really does gets into the meat and gravy on looking at industry trends and, identifying, different pathways. But with ENPP, what they can go ahead and do is meet someone in person, one of our employment navigators, to kind of meet them where they're at, and also provide them with some guidance on, hey, I mean, if this is a direction that you're looking at going, then perhaps let's go ahead and get you aligned with one of our partners. And we do, in fact, have some really strong energy partners within that ENPP ecosystem. They're very active. I saw them just a couple months ago in Colorado at a big student veteran convening. They do amazing work, and veterans certainly are a hot commodity, not just in the energy space, but in really any space.
Thank you so much, Matthew. So we've talked a bunch about skill translation, but Jeff, I wanted to pull in a little bit of your prior work. You primarily focus on skills in the report and skill translation, but you've done a lot of research studying other job attributes like working conditions. Are there other aspects of energy and infrastructure careers that you think translate well from military service?
Yeah, I think this is an important question because, one of the things that we can do is we can talk about how skills match to service members' prior service. one of the things that's really difficult to know is whether or not people want to actually enter into these types of careers, right? Like people leave the military for a reason. If you didn't like your job or you didn't like your boss, maybe you don't want to do the same kind of thing. So I think the working conditions is a dimension of this that often gets left out, and trying to figure out whether or not people want to enter these careers and whether it suits their preferences is an important component of this. A lot of people go to college, they use the GI Bill, and they're going to take a job that maybe doesn't require them to do physically demanding labor, like some of these jobs would. But there's a lot of people who don't use their GI Bill, who aren't going to go to college, are not interested in it, and they need to have pathways that are meaningful for them that can, again, provide family sustaining wages. And these are the kinds of jobs that I think can do that. So the other thing I think is important to think about as part of the working conditions issues is that they're career pathways here. We talk about moving people into a specific job post service, but in fact, that's just a step on potentially a career pathway that I'm now doing installation, but I might manage a crew in 3 or 5 years from now, given my leadership experience and my skills and abilities, and then I might later move into a supervisory role. So these careers aren't just I'm going to be a solar installer for the rest of my life. So I think that these are dimensions of the job that are worth thinking about, and understanding those trajectories may be more appealing in the long run, 5, 10, 12 years down the road, that lead to significant supervisory responsibilities and really, really good jobs.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate you highlighting that leadership element too. I think that's so important for veterans and transitioning to the civilian workforce to find that element too. Mo Maddox, the Program and Talent Manager for Veterans to Naval Careers and California State University San Marcos Veterans Center, is here with us as well. Mo, I would love to hear your perspective. Jeff was just describing that there are some veterans who want to go directly into the workforce, and there are some who pause on their journey and seek additional skills and credentials. Would love to hear your perspective on how prior occupational specialty typically factors into the student veterans that you work with, thinking about their civilian career pursuits.
You kind of went on that last part. Was that 30 seconds? Can you repeat that one more time? The last sentence?
My apologies. So how does prior occupational specialty factor into the student veterans you work with? How does it factor into their choice of civilian career to pursue?
All right, thank you. Hi, everybody. Sorry for being late. How it factors in is here at Cal State University San Marcos and within Veterans and Naval Careers, another program that I run, 99% of all participants are pursuing majors that are not related to the MOS, meaning they get out and they're fully in the mood to transition. And so how their military occupations factors in really boils down to they don't want to do that anymore. They want to do literally anything else. And so sometimes about when it comes to life decisions and figure out what you want to be when you grow up, if you don't know what you want to be when you grow up, you want to check off the things you don't want to be because of the thing that you did. And so it's really about, in those things that you didn't like, the question then becomes, are there things you can extract from that you sort of liked that might be able to apply to anything else? Like, for instance, this morning I'm working with a student who was supply and she's pursuing psych, and it really boiled down to the thing she enjoyed about supply was working with the people themselves, and being able to figure out she doesn't know what she wants to do with her psych degree, but at the very least she knows that she enjoys providing services and helping, which is a great start. Then from there it's about plugging yourself in and realizing that you do have work experience, but it's on you to translate that work experience to people. And the best way to do that is through your personal communication, your personal relationships. And so part of my job is then from identifying what you don't want to be to guessing, kind of developing a clue of what you want to be, and then putting you on the pathway, getting you off campus and in front of people and asking them questions about what it took for them to get to where they are now and what you should be doing now to get to where you are in the future.
And Lakeisha, I see you nodding through Mo's comments. Is this aligned with your experience as well?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it it's what I'm sitting here and I'm listening to your story, Mo, and I'm like, I can relate to that, right? Myself. It's like, that's why I'm doing the work that I'm doing today, right? I was a combat military police officer when I was in the Army, right? And so I dealt with the community. I dealt with the community on base every single day. And so being able to do that and, realizing that I have a passion for working with people and within community is literally what led me to being able to do what my job today. So yes, I mean, it correlates so very well. And being able to help folks just really understand what they're going to do. And with us being able to have the information and the knowledge that we have now, and being able to incorporate that, we're able to help veterans in a way that I don't really think has ever really existed in historically. So yeah, just big ups to you, Mo, and all the work that you're doing.
We do have a very illustrious panel today. Jeff, I wanted to touch on the small number of occupations that had really high rates of match to the energy industry. That seems like a pattern we might see in skill translation writ large, where some specialties have really closer civilian analogs than others. And as we heard from Mo, maybe the folks without those close matches might just want to go do something completely different. Are there military occupations that are less translatable? And do we know if those veterans struggle more in transition?
Yes and no. So yes, we know that they don't translate well, and we don't know how badly they suffer because we don't have good data on military post transition civilian outcomes. But there's just very limited access to data. Like for example, our public data sets don't, the current population survey or the American Community Survey, which are our largest data sets in the United States that tell us about labor market outcomes, simply don't have information about even they might tell you that you're a veteran, but they don't tell us what military occupation you served in. They give us your service period. Maybe it was like Vietnam War era for 10 years from 64 to 75, or so it doesn't really tell you much. It doesn't even tell you whether they were officer and enlisted at the time that they served. So it's very difficult to figure out what the differences are in successful transition by MOS or any other occupational, whatever nomenclature you use in your service branch. And so, but we know through qualitative interview, through discussion with people, that there are fewer occupational matches for certain types of occupations. So there are very few 11 Bravos infantrymen who in the Army are going to, there's not a call, thank goodness, for that occupation in the civilian sector, right? No infantry in the civilian economy. 0311 for Marine Corps, same deal, right? Riflemen. So there are occupations that are difficult to place in direct skills, knowledge, and abilities that are going to translate. That said, there are many other skills that are developed as a result of working in those occupations, leadership being among them. But everyone talks about leadership. I think it's easy, but there are lots of other things that, time management, super important, being on time, right? uh, Working under pressure. These are really important skills that are and attributes that most military members succeed at, or else they don't thrive in the military. And as a consequence, those are almost always attributes that are rewarded in the civilian economy as well. So even if your direct skills don't translate to civilian occupations, there are other things, tenacity, time management, leadership, that will ultimately pay off in the civilian economy. Yeah.
Thanks. Matthew, is that consistent with your engagements as well and your discussions with the potential employers? Is that what you're hearing as well?
Yes, absolutely. And just to go ahead, and for any veterans or military affiliated community members that are online, I mean, I think if there's one big thing that you can take away is that please understand that you are indeed, and take it from someone who's I've worked now in this role three years, going on four, working with employers from small mom and pop shops up to your large global organizations across a multitude of industries. You're a hot commodity. You really are. And even if you're looking at doing a career change, right? Or let's say you're interested in energy, but perhaps maybe, for instance, you may not have a very specific energy related background. But first, I mean, understand that the energy and those are broad sectors, right? So I mean, you could even be a cybersecurity specialist, but and guess what? I mean, the energy industry needs those as well too. That's a very important. That's very important to the industry. It's very critical, in fact. Um, so you may not have energy specifically within your MOS title, but you may qualify, in fact, for various roles within there. Jeff, I like that you went ahead and hit on some of those other intangibles, like the leadership component. I mean, you have no idea how many times I've met with an employer that would say, you know, the biggest thing that I'm looking for is I'm looking for someone that has some discipline. I just need my workers to go ahead and show up on time, be in the right place, right uniform kind of a deal, which is something that we're all familiar with military background. But also, perhaps, you know, I've heard this a lot across too. It's like I need someone that you know is when if they're put in charge, they can go ahead and take charge. I need someone that has that background, and you get that with the military community. But there's other areas too. I mean, shoot, even if we can go ahead and take the 11 Bravo for instance. You could be an 11 Bravo, but you could still have project management skills, you know, from being 11 Bravo. You could still be involved. Perhaps you might get put in the S4 or supply section and what have you. So you might have some logistics background. In addition to any sort of mechanical aptitude, you know, system maintenance. And here's a big one too, but safety oversight, right? I mean, safety, I still remember the saying, everyone's a safety officer when I was in the military. And before I transitioned to the civilian world, CRM, which it means something different to me now, but CRM, you know, customer relation management, that meant something completely different in the military. It meant composite risk management. And that was an annual requirement. We would take that. That was safety driven. So I mean, I think that's something important to go ahead and keep in mind. If you are a transitioning service member, or you're veteran status now, or even military spouse, and you're looking at, you're interested in these kind of careers, and you're saying, well, you know, I don't know if I maybe have what everything that has is, just know, again, it's very broad, and you have a lot more you're bringing to the table than you would. Don't shortchange yourself, because you're bringing a lot to the table.
This is really engaging our audience. We're getting some rich discussion in the chat. And we also have a question from an audience member on this topic here, a little more detail about how much the military as a whole contributes to high matches to certain occupations. So the research suggests that besides occupational specialty, there are elements of the military experience that are responsible for creating the strong matches. And so we see a lot of the same occupations coming up for many types of military occupations. So I'll give Jeff and Matthew first crack at this, but anyone can chime in on this one.
I don't know if I know the answer to that. Broadly over the entire macro economy, the extent to it. Again, I think part of the problem, you know, I could venture a guess that would just be that, in part because of the reasons I explained earlier. Since we don't have good occupational matching from from the military MOS AFSC rating, we simply don't know, right? Whether or not those are good matches, what the quality of those matches are, whether, you know, it's incredibly difficult to put a dollar figure on the value of the matches that have been made as a result of military service, given that we don't know much about what people do post-service. It's just there's a dearth of data, of good data, that allows us to do that. Sadly.
And Melanie, can you repeat that question one more time, please?
Absolutely. So the question is less at the occupation level, how much of it is military service itself versus, you know, a specific occupational specialty that drives the translatability to these occupations?
I got you. That's a great question. And, you know, I'll go ahead and I'll drop this link in the chat too, because to go off of what Jeff said, I mean, I think it is a little bit hard, you know, to kind of capture everything. I mean, shoot, even I know when I was, Lakeisha, I'm very familiar to your neck of the woods, because I was also I played around at Fort Lost in the Woods myself. I was a chemical officer, but I can let you know, as a chemical officer, about 95% of my time was, in fact, actually anything and everything non-chemical related. So even though I had an MOS that kind of, and it could break down, I could use the ONET online tool and what have you to go ahead and kind of tell me what my MOS did and how that would translate. In fact, there's a lot of other areas, 95% of it, right, that that isn't captured within that alone. I think where the Department of War does a pretty good job, and in fact, I think it's a perfect segue too, because it's a big having a big push in this direction. But it's the USMAP program, United States Military Apprenticeship Program. I think that does a pretty good, phenomenal job. Maybe it's not perfect, but it is something, and they were able to go ahead and identify some of those civilian equivalent occupations. If you're on the call and you're active duty right now, I mean, please do look into this. This is a phenomenal opportunity to where essentially what you're doing right now, there's not too many major muscle movements that you would have to do. You would just kind of have to I mean, the website can go ahead and guide you through 4 easy steps, but at the end of the day, from just doing what you're doing and required to do within your current occupation, you can go ahead and record and submit completed hours for approval. That ultimately gets you a DOL certificate or of completion, or a journey worker card or what have you, that could potentially pay off in dividends, once you get to that point when you're transitioning out of the military. And again, that's a program you can take advantage of right away when you join. You don't have to wait until you're a transitioning service member and you're 6 months out. You can take advantage of this. Take advantage of it now.
Thanks so much, Matthew. I see Mo has his hand raised.
Yeah, I did want to add to that in the sense that better. I did want to add that with a program that I run called Veterans Enabled Careers, what we do is we offer student veterans pursuing STEM degrees research and development opportunities within the DoD, with the idea of creating pathways to future employment within the DoD, because the Department of Navy itself has specifically stated what better way to service future end users than to bring in previous end users. We've had about 200 interns since 2015, and out of those, 60% were techs in either one of the branches and got and user experience as techs to become engineers, mostly out of spite, in the sense of like, if we've been on active duty, we've all touched a piece of equipment, and we had the universal question, what idiot greenlit this piece of crap? And within Veterans Naval Careers, you play your cards right, one day you could be one of those idiots. But it really boils down to not just the technical skills of the MOS, but understanding the culture of the military itself, specifically, like in the sense of the Marine Corps. You give a Lance Corporal any little gadget and they will break it. I promise you that. They are really, really good at breaking stuff. And so, but they've used their experiences wondering why this piece of equipment was how it was, to inform what they wanted to do to make it better, or at the very least understand why this thing was created. And so, and remember, I'm talking about higher ed. I have never used their MOS ONET stuff as data for their resumes. It's always been the work that they did at the university level, if not their internship. And my goal for student veterans often, especially with the 99% rate of people pursuing MOSs degrees not related to their MOSs, the talking point is to make their military career take up as little space as possible on the resume. And they should be packed with stuff that they want to do for the future and not so rely upon what they did in the past.
Thank you so much, Mel. We have another interesting question from an audience member, and because it's about TAP, I'm going to have Matthew go last and get the last word on this. So, open season for anybody else. The comment is that the statutes that direct the transition and assistance programs have been on the books for a few years, directing collaboration and execution of TAP between VA, DOL, and DoD. Is there any need for the TAP model to be updated or changed to better meet today's service member needs or meet emergent needs like energy or manufacturing? Lakeisha, I see you nodding. You want to go first? Matthew, you're going last. You get the last word on this one.
I would say absolutely yes. Because I mean, it's been one of the things that because there's a lot of things. Well, who holds it, right? Is it the DoD that holds it? Is it the VA that holds it? You know, who holds it, right? And over the years, we have seen, I mean, great initiative. You know, it's heading in the right direction. It's what we want to see. But a lot of the problems that to where it has not been as effective as where like as it could be is that it really just comes down to difference of opinions of how it should be ran and who owns it. And who's going to be the ones that carry that heavy lift of being able to actually make sure that these things happen. The programs that we have in place right now, like TAP, you know, they are a step in the right direction. Um, but they're like I said, it just really depends on who holds it and how they decide it should be implemented. So it's just one of those things that as we continue to grow, because you know, to the point, the last question, you know, they stop taking data as soon as we get out, right? There is a very large piece, a chunk of information about veterans and service members when they come out of service that just isn't available because they stop tracking the data. And so if when we have programs like this right now, it's not necessarily incumbent to how we actually need this to work to where veterans can actually take have the best chance and opportunity, especially those who do not get the opportunity to go to college, right? Or dealing with socioeconomic issues that are not allowing them to seek a degree. Those are the ones that that are literally falling through the cracks, right? And that some of these programs just necessarily do not, you know, they don't have access to them or don't know about them. So, you know, that's the biggest thing. So yes, I say that there's always room for improvement. You know, there's always going to be room for improvement, but I do believe that with research like this and the great folks that are out here doing this work day in and day out, bringing veterans into the fold and educating the stakeholders and decision makers, we're on the right path to being able to create something a lot better that's going to translate so much more and be able to help a lot of people be able to keep a roof over their head. So, yes, that'll be my little 2 cents.
Positive direction there. Jeff, I saw you perking up at the information gaps piece of that. Anything you want to share about ways to improve TAP?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think talking about TAP is a little bit unfair. There's TAP 1.0, TAP 2.0, TAP. We're really in TAP 3.0 right now, and it has improved significantly in terms of the career paths that you can take, the kinds of information that you're allowed to, you're provided and given access to. So it's improved, I think, and I know that the MCTO is very keen on doing some data linkages to try and be able to evaluate TAP, and they're really working hard to build out these linkages to administrative data post-service so that people can look at this kinds of things. And in discussions with them, they've made it clear. As far as ownership of the program, I can't imagine how it would ever be anything but DoD, because you have to have permission to go to it, and no one's going to be able to authorize service members to go to TAP other than DoD. And so it's like we're stuck with DoD whether we like it or I think we're stuck with DoD whether we like it or not. Whether it should be a DOL program or would be improved by DOL running it is an open question. But I think it's always going DOW, sorry, DoD, in my world. And so I think that's where we're at. So, you know, then the last thing I'll say is rigorous evaluation of the program, very, very, very weak. We had lots of opportunities to do rigorous evaluation. It seems like Department of War is just not really all that interested in it. It's like, we like it, and therefore we're going to keep doing it. And it doesn't really, we're not really all that concerned about whether or not it's that effective. Cynical take, but that's mine.
Good to get all perspectives. Mo, love to hear your thoughts.
I like what Lucio Flores just said. Creating better relationships between TAPS and the command. I'll be honest, I was a Lance Corporal getting out, and I just wanted to get out. I did not care about what these people had to say. I was tired. I just came back from deployment. I'll sign whatever you want me to sign. I'll say whatever you want me to say. I'll do whatever you want me to do. I want to go home. And so part of the but there's the command piece. There's also the command piece emphasizing its importance, but also providing a space for people to be ready for it. Because oftentimes when you're in the checkout process, it's just a check on the box and we just want to go home. And so whether it be the command emphasizing it and putting it in a better positive light, or providing scenario where people can come back to it when they're ready for it, um, whatever that looks like, I have no clue. But I was out for about 2 years before I was actually ready to receive the lessons of what it meant to get out of the military, be out of the military, and be a civilian, and identity and all that. Like I was out for 2 years before I even got to it. And what is it? The average term, many veterans leave after 1 or 2 terms. So like, on average, they're about 26 to 28 years old. They've spent most of their formative advanced adolescent years in the military, where the military basically raised them into adulthood. And so they're what do they know? And so in that regard, like we it's oh, and the last piece is there's times where you're getting out and the military will look down, or your unit will look down upon you, or treat you like a leper, or let you just get out. Like my second tour in the Marine Corps, they're like, hey, just call us, let you know you're still alive. I didn't go to work for like 60 days. Um, and so it's really about being able to meet that veteran where they're at. And sometimes they just got to be ready to receive the lessons before it becomes successful. Like you can give like for using a workout, you can give a person all the good food and give them the right workout plan, but if they're not ready to work out and do the work, it's not going to matter.
Love the analogy there, Mo. And Matthew, I promise you the last word. Thank you.
Okay, yes, this is really good. So very exciting, and I love it. And one thing that I really love about the Veteran Employment and Training Service, and this was actually like one of the big selling points when I was doing my interview for the agency. And beforehand, I worked for your three federal agencies that tend to attract the most veterans when it comes to them wanting to do public service. But worked for the VA, worked for DoD, being a TAP manager, and then I worked for DHS, where I was recruiting at the national scale for Customs and Border Protection, and then I find myself over here. And I was surprised to hear that 97% of our employee population, they're also veterans. And I know there used to be a saying, at least, who one great recruiting tool, I think at one point for the VA, was who knows a veteran better than a veteran. So you have a lot of us that are working to go ahead and make this as perfect as we can. And I say as perfect as we can because at the end of the day, as it was mentioned, we're all fallible creatures, right? It's going to be really hard to go ahead and make anything perfect, if not impossible, but we can always go ahead and strive to go ahead and improve, which is why I welcome all this. This is great, great information. And I do like, so for one, to go ahead and answer the question, what are we doing? It's a consistent process. So we actually have different boards and committees and what have you, where we're all partners are at the table to go ahead and relook at certain things like the curriculum and things along those lines. What needs to go ahead and be maybe changed or adapted and what have you. Where does there need to be a little bit extra emphasis? So that is a constant thing that we're always looking at and doing. Also, I liked that Mo, you mentioned this a few times too, and then you gave that personal example, and I got to attest, I was the exact same way when I was in the military. You know, the onus is on the service member ultimately. I mean, we've all heard that saying, like you get what you put in, and I understand. I mean, I understand those dynamics and the difficulties. I mean, shoot, like when I was in, I felt, I'm an officer, more is expected of me, but I'm a West Point officer, so even more is expected of me. And I also happen to be one of the few chemical officers that had a Ranger tab on too, so even more is expected of me. And I treated, if I'm going to be honest, I treated my TAP process as a check in the block too, unfortunately, and it did unfortunately set me up for failure. Now, I think one area too is certainly a stronger to the individual that made the Lucio, creating better relations with the command and TAP. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean that's incredibly important. Really understanding. I understand the difficulties because mission readiness is ultimately the main focus, the main mission at Broad. I hope it is also understood that there's a component to that in those final stages, in the TAP process as well. It may not be seen right away, but if we're speaking in terms of mission readiness, I mean, what better recruitment tool can you have than someone being able to go ahead and get out of TAP, and that next day when they go ahead and they put on their veteran hat, they already have a job lined up, and not just a job, gainful employment, purposeful employment, something that's most ideal to them, where there's not too much questions. No, this is exactly what I wanted to do, and look at how the military set me up for success. I can't think of a better recruitment tool than something like that. That plays a huge component in the mission readiness piece as well. Um, it's there's a lot of dynamics to go ahead and balance out, because I also understand, and you know, our team, you mentioned earlier what are some industries that we're working in. The energy is one of them. Defense industrial base, that's a really big one too. I mean, lots of transferable skill sets to go ahead and support. That's a lot of purposeful work as well too, and really transferable skills. Where you know when you go and you're protecting, you're working on equipment, protecting your brothers and sisters in arms. That's purposeful work right there. But I can let you know when there was a question brought up, you know, about you know, for instance, going ahead and allowing individuals to go ahead and participate in the DOW Skill Bridge program. I mean, there was a valid point made that said, hey, I mean, we also are really, we need these individuals too, you know. So it's difficult. I know a saying in TAP too, it was come early, come often. I know that that's difficult as well, you know. But also knowing that no, you don't need to start 1 year out. You're required to start 1 year out, but if you're a retiree, you could start as soon as 24 months out. If you're a separatee, 18 months out. But to try your best, if for those service members on the call, try your best not to go ahead and treat that as a check in the block. And look, no surprise, this is going to be it's going to be dense too. So I mean, you're going to want to go ahead and refer back to this curriculum. You can certainly do so, and I'll drop a link in the chat. But all of this is available to you, where you can go ahead and you could take it over and over again. You could look at the resources over and over again. But even when you're in veteran status, and I do encourage you to please do that. No one's going to go ahead and be an expert when it comes to creating a resume. I mean, I know that's like a foreign thing for some of us. So naturally, you're not going to be perfect at it, but you know, you always have this available to you. And the last thing I would say is definitely you know, employer and association involvement as well. That is also critical. Ultimately, I mean, it takes a little bit of everyone to make sure that this program is as successful as it can be. Because I do know, with working with employers and sometimes some other industry associations, one thing that I would get back is, you know, you really need to do something about the resume piece with the TAP curriculum, because we're not getting good resumes. And my challenge is, well, what within the curriculum itself is off about the resume? And I'll provide the example too. Like, I mean, I don't think there's some people, but you know, if you know, your weapon when you join the military is brand new to you, not too many people are going to go ahead and shoot expert first time, right? It's going to take some time. So being able to get involved and engaged with some of those local the local TAP sites, in some of the career fairs within the area, so you can meet with some of these service members. I know this was something we practiced over at Fort Belvoir TAP, where we would welcome employers to go ahead and come in, talk a little bit about their industries, but also do some resume reviews too. I mean, that ultimately, I think that all of us together are going to go ahead and help make this and shape this into something as best as it can go and be.
Thank you so much, Matthew. I love ending on a forward-looking note. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for their time engaging on such an important and challenging topic. And I want to thank our engaged audience for their great questions. Carrie linked the report in the chat up at the top. This webinar was recorded. It will be available in about a week on the RAND Veterans Policy Research Institute website, which is www.rand.org/veterans. Thanks for your time.